Hello everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank our Board of Trustees of Golden West for being here. Today, we will be going over our research analysis, both ethical, financial, and legal, over Golden West's continued contract with Hire One Holdings Company, who essentially right now is the sole disperser of all student aid for all 17,000 of our students. Let us begin. Okay, as we begin, start from the beginning. Hire One Holdings Incorporated. Who are they? Starting from the beginning of last fall semester, they became the sole distributor of all kinds of student aid across all of Golden West College. This happened not out of a completely knowledgeable decision, seeing as Sally Mae, our previous provider, was quickly acquired by Hire One Holdings. We were left either options to either sink or take Hire One, which we did. So what exactly does Hire One do? Well, here it is. Hire One handles the disbursement of all student funds at Golden West, including, but not limited to, grants and scholarships, state and private loans, and student aid refunds. This means if you're a student at Golden West, and you have any kind of money coming in that's not yours, that's for your education, it must go through Hire One Holdings. And that is very problematic, as we shall soon see. So at first glance, it might seem like this is a very good deal, because the school pays $5,000 for their services that Salary provided for $20,000. That's only 25%. So everything that makes sense through a business perspective. But we are here to say that there is no such gain. That this cost is instead added, this massive burden is added to students at a huge interest. Here's why. Here's a larger picture. $5,000 for contract with school. We know that. But only 0.6% of Hire One's income actually comes from that first contract. In fact, looking at Hire One as the whole company, not just the schools, we see that 50% of all their income comes from student fees. On average, in fact, this was a quote from their CEO, Hire One makes about $50 per student. This means that our campus, having 17,000, they take in a gross revenue of $850,000 on top of that $5,000 contract that was supposed to save us money. This is added to the transfer and withdrawal fees, and it's added to them simply being very bureaucratic. They do not want students to be able to access easily. They want students to have these fees. This leads to delays, this leads to miscommunications, and this leads to a very hard time for all students at Golden West. Next, what did Hire One set out to do? Where did it go wrong? Let's look at its vision. First of all, Hire One says it prides itself on communication, on transparency. But just how can that be if they have all these fees that we never know about? When people come to Golden West and they have to use Hire One, they may take misstep after misstep. So where is that transparency? Where is that directness if every student at Golden West is for the most part confused over what's going on? Next, they pride themselves on saying that they need to engage with students over their financial planning. They pride themselves on saying that they're directly communicating with us, but no such thing ever occurs. There is little to no engagement with us. They leave us to fend for ourselves, and when we are unable to do so, they take advantage. Next is perhaps the biggest lie of all. Hire One was created by students for students. How is it for us if we are worse off than we have ever been, where we are drowned in fees without any other place to go but Hire One, since all our student aid must come from Hire One? And that brings us to the rest of our presentation. Taken over by colleague.
Now I'll be discussing the Hire One's finance, fees, and fibs. So the way Hire One justifies the contract is basically Hire One starts off as a bank that will collect all the student fees from our campus. So instead of disbursements of all student funds, they become the bank that collects all student fees. So if you look at it closely, it's no different than any other bank. It just kind of disguises himself to like make it seem legit. In the financial aspect, Hire One provides convenience to the students. So once the students at Golden West activate their Hire One account, they're now labeled as customers throughout which they're able to provide a valuable marketing tool for Hire One to further to advertise Hire One's message to the students beyond educating account. And then there goes with the marketing and fees. So the way Hire One charges students. For example, if a student who has a Hire One account if a student's Hire One account is overdrawn for more than 45 days, he or she is charged $50. If a student has a Hire One account he has not used after 6 months, he or she is charged $10 per month. A student who's overdrawing an account that includes a recurring bill payment, he or she will be charged $29 to $38. Now, an ATM that is not related to Hire One whatsoever, but however, a student who wants to withdraw money, he or she will still be charged with the fee of $2.75. Now, the point of service fee is when the student with the Hire One account uses the debit card from Hire One to use it for their own necessary purposes. However, every time they use the debit card, they're charged with a 50-cent fee. Now, that just means that every time they use for their own necessary purposes, they will be charged 50 cents, which adds up. And the way Hire One makes money. If the school doesn't use Hire One to reimburse funds that is for less than 9% of students, the school will be charged $1 per student, which is at our campus is 17,000 students. So in the total, they'll be charged $70,000, which they're calling it the debit card mains, to make sure that the schools recognized to they're supposed to use Hire One as a message. You need to use Hire One so why charge this fee when that means that Hire One does less the work? Well, basically, Hire One is given permission by a school to use the name and logo in order to gain the students' trust into activating the Hire One account and card. Now, they don't make the money from the student fees, but they can still market it, meaning that once they under the logo of the school's name and logo, they can market themselves to noticeable to students in order to persuade them to activate the card. So in other words, to charge more fees. This is the bar graph of a cost and revenue comparison. So the Hire One income from student contract was $5,000. On the first column was $5,000. The last column, light blue column, the Hire One income from the salary contract was $20,000. Whereas the center column, the green, the way Hire One charged students with fees was $850,000, which just skyrockets. Which now I lead to
Hey, so I'll be dealing with the more ethical issues problems with dealing with Hire One. First, we should define terms of dishonesty is defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary as being a lack of honesty or integrity, disposition to deceive or defraud. So this is how Hire One communicates with students. So students were given this one letter from Hire One that is titled as an important information from Coastline Community College District in Golden West College. And this is all it said. All it said was that it's a quick and easy way to make money off of your school. It's not a credit card. It's just an easy way to make money off of your school. It's nothing on here saying that dealing with any fees, that the fact that it's going to work instead of being a direct deposit into the student's bank account, they'll basically have to make a new bank account to get the money that we've been getting, that the students have been getting previously. The other way that Hire One communicates is through emails, where they go and they email students with account updates, how much money, different ways to go and get scholarship funds or loans through Hire One. And it's mostly reminders, and everything there is marketed with the Golden West College name and logo.
Well, as you've heard, my name is Spencer, and this is my personal student story when handling with Hire One's previous semester. When going through the summer of this last fall semester was when Hire One first bought Sallie Mae and the fund disbursement to the schools. Originally, the Hire One card for me didn't even come in the mail. I originally got the Sallie Mae card again in the mail, and when I went to my school's financial aid office and talked to Hire One, they both said that I could not use the Sallie Mae card whatsoever. When I then asked, okay, well, I will need my Hire One card, they said, okay, we'll get it out to you, fill this out, paperwork, filled out a form saying I lost my original card, and it took them an extra month to even hear back with even a word, not even a card. I was told then, well, can I just put a direct deposit into my own bank account if I can't make my card? And they told me without an actual Hire One account, as well as the activation of my own Hire One debit card that was supposed to be coming in the mail, I would not even be allowed to direct deposit into my own account yet. It took me nearly all semester to get my funds. The card came with about 2 weeks left in the semester, and the funds dispersed later that week, leaving me not even a week by the finals, and by that time I'd already found many other ways between taking out personal loans. I maxed out my credit card this last semester, borrowed money from family, friends, IOUs, and honestly, I'm very happy with my friends and who I have, but it's not a fun thing to do or have to go through just to go through school. As well as once I actually got the money onto my Hire One card finally at the end of the semester, it cost me hundreds in fees just to even transfer the money from that card to my own bank account, on credit transfer fees, you name it, tons of different fees that I had tried every single different way to get money out of my card, and this was the cheapest that I could find. Honestly, I've been working since I was 16 to get my credit to a good standing, and I felt like this last year I was doing quite a good job. And that just took a tumble this semester in waiting for my own money, waiting for Hire One, and with it, taking out my own credit and paying my own bills from it through the semester. This is another one of our colleagues at school, David. He went without receiving any financial aid assistance this semester. David still received 3 Hire One cards, and at least, he says, 30 emails just pertaining to Hire One cards and their accounts and how to activate them. His girlfriend also, who's not even enrolled at Golden West College at our school, got 2 cards in the mail and numerous more emails. Talking with one of our friends, Chris, received a letter from Hire One and threw it away immediately. Great choice on his behalf. Another one of our friends, Chris, received a card in the mail, a few emails about that card. Of course, when you look at it first, you say, well, I need my money. It sounds like a great idea. But his mother informed him there's most likely going to be fees, loopholes, and tons to jump through. Some of his acquaintances and friends at school didn't know this and actually ended up paying those fees, as well as me. Luis received a card, thought it didn't look serious, received 3 emails, and ignored all of them. Friend Han received a card through the mail and thought, although it seemed legit and sounded like a good idea, but when he went to activate it, he couldn't because he didn't have a California ID, leaving him stranded that entire semester without money. Friend Angel received a card and a number of emails. He thought, I didn't ask for this card, read the fine print and found it truthfully unnerving and decided not to activate it.
Alright, so according to the Black's Legal Dictionary, which is the dictionary used by the vast majority of lawyers in the United States, they define theft as a dishonest act that is criminal by assuming the rights of an owner of a product by depriving the real owner of a product. So how does Hire One constitute theft? Their intent is to make profits from fees through opaque communication and entails an intent to deprive students of their funds. So basically what we're saying is that it's harmful because this money isn't Hire One's, it's coming through government aid and scholarships. Their job is to disperse it, yet they treat it as their own money and make students go through loopholes, go through hoops and fees in order to go and access the money that is legally theirs. Their job in the contract is to disperse funds, not to go and hold on to them, or withhold access from it. So like a legal present, there's actually a lot of legal action being taken against Hire One currently, and even back before Golden West went into contract with them. Why Hire One focuses on schools? They claim that they're for the students, by the students, and that they're a group of like friends from college thought, hey, it's a good idea to go and make all funds in school just be accessed through a single credit card. which basically create a monopoly on campus. So the only way all funds go through one credit card. With all the hidden fees students are charged, wondering how are they for the students? This goes against everything they say on their website and their mission statement. And Hire One has claimed in interviews that they really can't be so bad because they have so many customers, but really it's more of the customers are coerced into doing business with them. The students are left with no way of accessing their student aid or federal aid besides doing business through Hire One, which doesn't have their best interest in mind. Schools with Hire One programs, this is not just a problem with Going West. In 2009, a law was enforced to ban credit cards given to students who could not repay. Colleges were forced to disclose deals with credit card companies, which stopped them from marketing such as offering students free gifts in exchange for obtaining a credit card. This affects Going West College, also Michigan State's higher education system, Southern Oregon, and 800 plus more schools.
So as my colleagues pointed out, Hire One's deceptive practices have gotten it in trouble and landed it in court. A student, Sherry McFaw from Ventura County Community College, filed a class action lawsuit against Hire One on the grounds that Hire One would open accounts on behalf of students and deposit their financial aid without their consent, and also they would inadequately disclose information on the fees that they would be charged when they use their services. And she also goes on to say that that they don't explain the other services that they have adequately, as shown an example throughout the letters that are sent to the students. The letters like this one, being a main example, does not properly say much of the legal rights and information on the fees on the back. And on the front, right here, she claims that they promote the card, that it is not a credit card and that it should be used as a debit card. But when students use it as a debit card, they are charged a fee. And the only way a student can get around this fee is to use it as a credit card. These practices are examples of how they deceive the students, and eventually this ends up hurting the students. And these practices are unavoidable. They can't, and they benefit that they promote, saying that it's more efficient, and the students get more money immediately with their services. But in reality, if they don't choose their services, their money, their disbursements will be delayed. The Jeanette Price versus Hire One Holdings case is actually lawsuits filed by 12 separate students from 10 different states, and these lawsuits are consolidated by a federal judge into one because the grounds are all the same. Basically, the grounds of this case is essentially exactly the same as McFall's case. The students are successful in winning the case, and they were suing for at least $5 million, but the settlement ended up being $15 million. And the fact that they won this case goes to show that Hire One's practices are questionable and, of course, unfair. Because of this, it has also gotten attention from the FDIC. The FDIC forced Hire One to agree to a settlement of $11 million to be to be refunded back to 60,000 students for charging fees on their use of ATMs. Yes, the settlement was reached because they were found to be violating Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission, which states, clarifies what would be considered an unfair and deceitful practice. And this would be three things mainly: that for it to be an unfair practice, it must harm the students. It must not be avoidable, meaning that if the students can't get around it, it is unfair. And also the benefits that they provide don't outweigh the problems that they end up with. Yeah.
This last section is called The Future of Golden West College. So, why did we work with Hire One at the beginning? To save money, because it was our only option. But what has happened is that students are left basically to fend for themselves. They have no other option. As we have seen, Hire One is simply malevolent. They have unethical banking practices. They are unavoidable for our students. Why not to work with Hire One? We cannot continue to work with Hire One. We already made a mistake once in making a hard decision to work with them. That has gone very badly. We have sold away our logo, we have sold away identity, and basically along with it, without knowing saying we are integrity. We cannot continue, you who are the Board of Trustees, you who are given the job of taking care of these students, we're going to continue working with Hire One. We must terminate our contract and cease working with such an unethical partner as soon as possible. Our first step that we propose in order to get away from all these unfair banking practices is to start an exploratory committee to see where does the administration think we can take this? Where can we return to? Perhaps it's another alternative, perhaps there's something else we can do, perhaps there's, instead of looking at banks, we look at credit unions and such. That brings us to our next point. But we can partner with a credit union, like Schools First, to manage a financial disbursement, on which we got an estimate of $30,000 per year. Which, while it's still even more than in our previous engagement with Sally Mae, it still saves our students hundreds of thousands of dollars. And stops them having to deal with such bureaucracy, such overwhelming fees, from all this confusion, and brings them to a better place. Then we'll be doing our job, making sure that we can give the best to our students. Or we create a student union between the Coast College system, including us and our sister colleges, Coast Community College and Orange Coast Community College. They could come together and to get rid of the middleman entirely in order to better work for their students. So it's having a middleman come in and take advantage of them, having to reap the rewards of the resultant monopoly. So at the end, we ask you to believe in your students. We ask you to work for what's best for them. We ask you to realize that no matter how much money we may save at the beginning, no amount is worth doing that to our students. No amount is worth letting our students be taken advantage of by a separate corporation. So we thank you for listening to us, Board of Trustees. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and now move into our Q&A session. So I'll start things off and then we'll just kind of work down the line here and then work back up. Does that sound fair, judges? Okay, so very interesting topic. You are a student task force, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
And you're talking to the trustees.
Yes.
And I'm looking at my other trustees and I'm saying, we are using this company as a scapegoat because ultimately I feel like we're the ones that are on the hook here. This company didn't just show up. We had to allow this company into the institution. Mm-hmm. And somehow, some way, I feel as if we have been conveniently ignored on this issue? Why didn't we do due diligence? Why aren't you more concerned with the institution that obviously arranged for this organization to get affiliated? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we felt that the best way to go and get change is not to be accusatory towards the board of directors, but instead try to work with them to find a better solution. Like if we came in here fire and brimstone attacking the board of directors, they would get felt that they might get defensive. So instead we should go and say, look, you guys did kind of mess up, but let's look at the issue, let's find a better solution going forward.
We're trustees though.
Yeah, trustees.
So we'll exchange the fiduciary role, but I mean, our obligation is to you students. You should be upset with us, quite frankly. And we can be concerned with the bank, but the bank is only operating under the conditions that we agreed to. So I feel like we've probably not done our due diligence here, and feel free anyone else to jump in on this, but you were going to say something?
Yes, I was going to say, due to with how fast that this was taken up within a month of how Hire One bought Sallie Mae, we could see how it might have been rushed into, and we came prepared here to this conference to share and gain even more knowledge while we presented, so that when we go back to our own school, we can eventually entertain it to the Board of Trustees.
All right, so I'm completely aligned with that. I think that we may have dropped the ball somewhere, and perhaps there wasn't another option, as you suggested, that we had to do it. But still, I agree that you should certainly be frustrated with us. You suggest that we have an exploratory committee. Who's going to be on it?
As the slide said, there'll be like a kind of task force of like the administration, there's a student
administration.
There's like they have the administration has a finance commission. I believe this could be under their purview. It also is could be part of the Associated Student Body of Golden West College. So they have the student body has their own finance committee that has actually in the past been reviewing the contract with Hire One. And also we should have like the faculty should have a voice. They have their own faculty has their own kind of government going on that I immediately don't understand exactly how it works, but they also should have a voice in the finance and the exploratory committee.
Yeah, I agree with the concern with the university itself, and so that's something that I would explore more. A question that I've got is around, you talked about the cost with Sallie Mae, and now you've gone to Hire One and there's the additional cost. You're talking about the board now considering other options than Hire One. I assume with Sallie Mae that, or any other organization, there are going to be fees in addition to the $20,000 or $30,000 that was explained. All banks have insufficient funds, fees. Do you have background on what is it that Sallie Mae did that was better than Hire One?
Yes, Sallie Mae, the school paid like $20,000 to them as a flat fee, and in return Sallie Mae just dispersed funds as a direct deposit into students' bank accounts. It was it didn't charge the students anything. I don't believe there were any extra fees attached to the school. They were given $20,000. They dispersed, in return they dispersed funds as a direct deposit.
Okay. Is there an option with Hire One to ask for that type of an approach?
It is hidden, they claim they do, but there's hidden fees attached to it. They had a fee attached to having direct deposit, and in return, like there's the frustrations where students would have a tendency to lose students information when they request it. Did the fax in, how to get fax in the information, get direct deposit, and then a few months later they're told, oh yeah, we lost it.
Okay, so some of your case examples, you demonstrate poor performance.
Yeah, they have a poor performance standard, yes.
If that's something I'd like to add to that is too, a few years ago, Hire One actually charged $25 for that direct deposit. It was only until a recent lawsuit that they actually stopped doing that.
Can you queue up your recommendations again? Is that possible?
Sure.
Yes, of course.
And what I'll do is you're pulling it up. The one that jumped out at me, again as a trustee, was I think the second recommendation where you suggested that we look at potentially get in this business of loaning. And I just want to maybe kind of ask a rhetorical question, but how is that different from a monopolistic standpoint? I mean, do you really think that's a viable recommendation? Is that really what we want to do as an institution? I would have some concerns. I could see some conveniences around that, but I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll take that. With that being said, I think that when going forward and making this exploratory committee with the students, with the faculty, that is the goal, and not being able to have hidden fees and or funds that would be channeled elsewhere from the students. The main goal being that we would take the $30,000 from each school, being the contract from the school and not the students' money, and put that toward the original funding of the credit union within each school, was the original idea, as well as use normal everyday credit union fees that are associated with Schools First and other credit unions that we've looked into and how they run their business propositions. And we would like to copy and somewhat take that, but make it not so we outsource it to someone else, but keep it within the school and for the students, with the students, as what we think it should really be, not what Hire One says it was.
So further to that, we're obviously going to incur a cost, right, to establish this, particularly an expertise cost, an expertise that we don't have, right? We're going to have to hire, I'm assuming, lawyers and consultants and all sorts of folks. Where are you proposing that money come from? Because that's obviously, you know, we're talking about trying to decrease costs for students.
Yeah.
It's going to cost to do that, and there are going to be maintenance fees to continue to run it.
The idea was that solution one is like a short-term goal. I was saying it could be done immediately, just find someone else that's doing the business. Solution two was a long-term goal where to cut out basically the middleman, which is, you know, the banks Hire One, and do the cost themselves, and could run like cheaper and more honestly and open, because they're held more accountable. Like the money could come from many different places. For example, I know because I'm a member of student government that student government has, IBECC West has a bank account it currently has $900,000 from rollbacks from previous years, previous surpluses. So they could, since the student government is involved, would be involved in exploratory committee, they could volunteer like, hey, we could front some of the costs. We fronted the cost for summer school before. We could help front at least a good chunk of the cost of creating a more honest system that's open to the students.
As well as in the hopes of, once get going from that original upstart fee, it will create its own revenue, not just for the students working for it, but also a better system for the students in it.
In one case, you talked about a lawsuit. It was the McBall lawsuit. I didn't hear whether that was settled or not, but you did talk about another one, the Jeanette Price deal that was settled. It sounds like Hire One is now taking some responsibility and ownership for their actions. They've made some agreements with the FDIC. I know that they've hired a new CEO who's really been bent on turning the company around and fixing some of the problems. Is there any reason that we shouldn't consider whether or not they are changing and becoming an organization that is for students?
Yeah, things like you look at a company's history, and that their history has shown that they are very unethical and dishonest company. And even though it was like the new CEO, like every time a new CEO comes up, he says, "Oh yeah, we're going to turn the ship, we're going to do everything right." But in the day, they're still making all their money from students instead of from the school. Like that's the entire business plan is built in a way where they are cheap for a school, but transfer all the costs onto students who are just trying to get by. Because of that, their business plan, which is going to stay relatively the same, is a completely unethical business plan. And so we say ethically, it is a very, we can't ignore this, and so we should just stop doing business with this company and find someone else to go to.
So, where is the student responsibility on this? I mean, we've talked about the responsibility of the trustees. We've talked about, obviously, the responsibility that we feel with the bank. What about students? I mean, from the banking standpoint, I would say, I'm assuming these are adults. They're rational. They pay attention. They, as consumers, look into these elements. Now, if it is the case where there's no information or real lacking information, that's one thing, but can you talk a little bit about the student responsibility on this as well?
And students develop, like, it's their responsibility to get educated, but really, even if they're educated, they're promised from school a certain amount of financial aid if they qualify. They also are for grants and other things and scholarships. But their only method of getting it at Going West right now is to go through Hire One and to go through and to register an account and all that stuff. And even then, like, you register, you get access to some funds, but through a bunch of fees. They have a bunch of Hire One has poor performance, and even if you go through all their loopholes and you fax in everything you want, months later, they'll be like, oh yeah, we just didn't get your fax, even though you faxed this 3 months ago. So the students have been responding, like they've been petitioning the student government and the finance committee. The finance committee has been reviewing the contract, but then they don't have the power to nullify a contract that don't want to sign. All you do is try to bring it up to the administration, which has been happening, but that's all the students can do is be angry and yell.
I'd also like to add, when looking at my story, I really tried to pursue Hire One and getting my funds, my card, as well as knowing that the direct way that I had to go was, okay, I need the card, I need to activate it, I need to get my funds, and they told me how I need to do it. And even with them telling me how to do it, it still took me 3 months by the end of the semester, and they took a bunch of money from me and overall ruined my credit and the way I went about it. As well as I heard the same story from one of our friends who was in here, we didn't get to list to mention, that he didn't necessarily have as much money taken from him, but he inquired in the first few weeks of November, and it took them approximately mid-January, even after the semester, to get back to him with the response, where they say that their response time is anywhere before a week to the next 2 weeks, and it just takes him that long, as well as it took him 2 to 3 days to get half of his first generation of money, which it says 2 to 3 days, it took 3 days just to get half, and 3 days even after that, he got the rest of it. And that to us is also a little shady when we looked at it and questioned why.
Can I do a quick follow-up on that? So have you, as a student task force, have you checked in with, say, the Better Business Bureau to see where this company is at in the local market? I think that would be important for us to know. I mean, we have to believe what you're saying, but the other thing that would be a concern for me as a trustee is, do you have, and I'm going to say something in the feedback portion about the effectiveness of the personal stories. I mean, I want to give you a lot of credit, but that's anecdotal. So do you have a survey that you've administered? Do you have some way to give us data? We can argue about the questions, we can argue about, you know, the sample size, but do you have a way to convince us, outside of the personal accounts, which are powerful, that it's not just the case that we have 5 or 6 students that are very passionate about this? What if it turns out that there's, for every 5 of you, 50 on campus that say, you know what, this has worked out well with me, I've established my credit, and I need to be a little more convinced. So can you talk about that?
So I'm on the student body's finance committee. So we've been working on actually a game petition. Unfortunately, there's been, through like some school politics, though, the old finance commissioner was removed, and so he was in the process of starting a survey. It unfortunately fell through. I'm working on fixing that. But throughout every communication we had with students, it's been universally negative. I actually did not see them on Better Business Bureau, but if you just Google Hire One, you see a bunch of, every single tick on Google is just negative stories, negative stories, negative stories. Hire One's website, and then more negative stories, more lawsuits. Just a simple Google search of just the name Hire One, everything you get is negative.
And I'd also like to add that as an unofficial survey, when knowing that this one fell through, I somewhat went around my campus taking an initiative to ask a lot of my friends and students, what did they personally feel? And a lot of the feedback, I mean, even the decent to good feedback, was still problems, I can't get my money, they didn't get it to me on time. And we tried to take a few quotes down in what we did in the stories, but didn't want to add a bunch in there. And yeah, so anything that we've honestly looked at, even the best of the stories have still seen problems all over, not even one story that we've honestly heard to where it all worked out.
So with your first suggestion that we partner with a bank or a credit union, these are for-profit institutions. We're still going to have to pay them money. Are you suggesting, you know, that we should get these services for free as students? Are you asking the trustees to find, you know, an institution that's going to provide the services to you for free, like Sally Mae did? Yeah,
what we're asking is to go visit with the bank with the contract similar to Sally Mae, where Sally Mae is a very honest. Is the school pays $20,000 to Sally Mae. In return, Sally Mae would do direct deposits into student bank accounts. And so we're just asking that the burden is on the school, well, at a reasonable price, instead of putting the burden on the students, because by putting the burden on students to pay money in order to get the money the school promised to them is unethical, and it's dishonest and just hurts students. The goal of Going West as an educational institution should be for the students, and so it's only reasonable that they absorb the burden of the cost instead of transferring it to students right now.
Can I do a quick follow-up?
Sure,
Just
absolutely.
My understanding, some of the examples that you gave were about students who received sort of the one-pager with the card, with the information, who chose not to activate the card because they did their own due diligence or just because it didn't feel comfortable to them. How do they access their money? You said that was only a choice.
Yeah,
How do they access
they
their
chose
money?
to just pay it out of pocket. They didn't get any of the money. Those were students that were more advantaged. So they said, you know what, instead of getting financial aid, I'll just pay it out of pocket, pay the full price of the credits.
So they're just left financial aid, grants, scholarships, things like that on the table?
Yes.
Wow.
Which, yeah, I had to pay for my classes for first semester, the full payment without any financial aid. So I was like, because I didn't activate it, so I was left with, my own pocket money in my account. So I just used that up, most of my money in my own bank account to pay for all my classes.
As well as I had the same situation, besides the Board of Governors fee waivers that I get for my classes, I had to pay everything out of pocket.
So you're saying that students forego financial aid that's awarded to them because of the process they have to go through with Hire One to obtain those funds?
Yes.
They just come up with
Definitely some do and have, yes.
Okay. Good more. Okay. Just a question around, you make a very compelling case, and I agree with the examples of students that have been harmed. You talk about students that have been harmed. You talk about other universities. You make very strong accusations about theft, unethical behavior on the part of Hire One. You're focusing on, with us as a board, to make a change for the future. But what you've described as people that have been harmed, why is there no discussion around restitution? Is that not something, if people have been harmed, students have been at Golden West College, is this something you're not concerned with addressing?
I think the best way to get change is to not go and try to take action against the school, not try to punish the school in any way, because they were put, as like we admit that they were put into a tough position where they're told like a couple months before the next semester started that Sallie Mae was acquired. They could choose to go with Hire One with their new contract, or just go on their own and try to find someone else. So they were in a tough position. We recognize that, so we're not trying to punish the school. The school, if they want to take legal action against Hire One, they have their own legal department. It's not the student's responsibility. But we're just asking for a change to lead in a more honest and open direction that's in the best interest of the students and the school.
And we personally like to first of all take care of the problem, then look for our pieces after. For peace.
Okay. Would it not make sense to have a foothold here to say that there's another part to this story, is that people have been harmed, and that that's something that as a college should look at in the future? Not to say that you as a student group are telling them what should be done, but you're clearly making a case for change based on past what you call unethical and well, let me ask this, from your case examples, are you talking, do you believe that the Hire One organization violated any laws?
We're saying that they've been found guilty in the court of law of violating several laws.
With Golden West College?
With Golden West, we can't say for sure because we're not lawyers. We're just looking at it from an ethical issue. But the Golden West has their own legal department. There's something that they should look into.
As well as when looking through, as you saw, the note that we brought is just the one letter original introduction, Hire One to us, the students. There's nothing about the multiple fees on there that we do have to pay that are hidden, as well as when you look at the original 5-page contract online, there's extra fees, but not even near the amount of multiple more ones that we still have to pay.
So we're just about up on time. I'm going to just ask you one really quick final question. What is the closest community college or university to your institution?
It would be either Orange Coast College or Coastline Community College, which are both part of the Coast Community College School District.
So they are also tied in?
They're also tied into this. Yeah, it's a district issue.
It's a district?
Yeah.
Okay. How about a university or another community college outside the district? In proximity?
Okay. Hire One does not publicly disclose like who they have. Who also they do business with. So we just know through lawsuits they've done business with. The closest one is South Oregon University. I guess this is now public knowledge, so
Okay.
we're doing the best we can.
Okay. Very good. All right. So now, take a breath. Relax a little, and now what we'll do is we're just going to we're just going to offer you some feedback, and I'll start off and then kind of roll our way through, and we've got 10 minutes. First of all, don't take my questions and the position I took as anything but a positive gesture to all of you. I think you have a really intriguing, issue that you've brought forward, and for me personally, I like to try to challenge you just to get you to think about, some of the implications. And in the end, just try to help improve your position. I want to tell you that going forward, just a few recommendations. It would be really helpful if when you start, you lay out for us, because it was part of the assignment, how you're going to walk through whatever the order is, the financial, legal, and ethical considerations. I mean, you did it, but it was kind of hard to follow. But I know that the thinking was there. So if you can, lay that out so that we can kind of follow you as you work your way through it. Lots of credit to you for the personal accounts. I mean, the challenge I've had with this competition or things that I've run in my business school is whether you're an undergrad or grad, sometimes the analysis is very abstract and it doesn't really touch me or the group that is being spoken to. You had no problem with that. I mean, is it Spencer?
Yeah.
I mean, I know your name not because of your badge, but because of your personal account.
Thank you very much.
I want to give you a lot of credit because it's honest and it's also very effective, and it really changed. It really changed my perspective. It also helps to explain why I was upset with your trustees and why I almost started redirecting the discussion from this company, which there's a lot of room for discussion, but back on the trustees. But going forward, you've got the thinking. Try to lay out in a very kind of cogent way how you're going to go about attacking the issue, and then really also try to leave with that recommendation that you really feel is the one that is the right recommendation. Use some of our feedback as a way to even kind of refine that a little bit. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On these solutions, what would you find that you personally liked about those, if not even taking one, if not both, and making a new solution?
Yeah, so first of all, Sallie Mae they've had their own issues along with Freddie Mac, so don't think that they are the standard. They have had their own ethical issues. So the harder part is going to be finding any institution at a certain level that hasn't had issues. I think acknowledging that students are customers from a business standpoint, from a banking standpoint. The banks know that your lifetime earnings are exponentially going to increase with the years of education that you earn. They also know that in some segments that you're still connected with your parents. And I have kids, and I'm not sure if our panel does, but I'm not a helicopter parent, but I would do anything to help shelter my kids. And if they got in trouble, they're banking. The banks are banking on the parents coming in and rescuing. And so it's a great financial bet to go with students. But you are customers, and you are promising customers going forward. It is a bank. It is a business transaction. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't expect them not to make money, so don't feel that that is necessarily a bad thing, because that's how it works in the banking institutions. I mean, now there's differences between predatory lending and other sorts, but it's okay. I mean, I think you're going to get, I know you're going to get further along in moving this forward, and I think we agree if you accept that premise. Does that make sense? Because what happens with practical professionals is when you say, oh, those banks, they're evil. Well, okay, they're banks though, right? There's a level of understanding, right?
And that was my point, right?
Yes.
Like, they're for profit, they have to make money. How
Yes.
are you suggesting that they shouldn't make, any at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Feel free.
Yeah. All right. So, very, very, very well done. you guys are all in college?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
some
ma'am.
first years. I was struck actually by biology, philosophy, and physics majors, and a couple undecided. And you're doing business ethics, which I think is absolutely fantastic. We didn't have that a gazillion years ago when I was in school. So very, very well done. And like my colleague here, the things that I'm going to say, certainly take them to heart and take them that I have your best interest in mind. You mentioned before about sort of the lack of statistics or concrete data. You appeal to, but I want to reiterate that, you appeal to my emotions, right? But I don't want to make decisions based on emotions. If it was just an emotional decision, done. I'd run out and find somebody else. But just think about ways that you can perhaps, right, even though the survey fell through, figure out if there are other ways that you might be able to get some concrete data to put in front of whoever is going to be reviewing this. Many organizations are data-driven organizations, and unfortunately I've worked in one of those. And so, I'm all about kind of the numbers and the data. And as a board of trustees, right, we're going to be interested in the data. The second thing that I would say, and I don't know if you're permitted to do handouts or anything like that, but it would have been helpful, the letters that you were holding on to, it would have been helpful if I could look at it and look at, the limited information that, conspicuous information or lack thereof, that you were saying, happened to be distributed to the students. So maybe think about using handouts in the future.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know we were allowed to, so I decided it'd be better to err on a side caution.
Well, here's the other alternative. You could do a digital scan and then just pop it up there, and then we can see exactly, blot out the name if you know.
Okay.
But yes.
And then just a couple of so that's all really sort of substantively, because I thought that substantively you did a very nice job. But just a couple of pointers on presentation skills. Slow down. I know that you're, against a clock, but slow down. A couple of times I find myself trying to catch up with what you were saying, maybe in part because the roadmap wasn't there, initially, but definitely slow down. And the clicker is distracting when you do like that, right? So just gently do it. It'll click. I promise it will. Don't do that. Okay. And there's some people who, will totally be distracted by that and tune you out because that's what you're doing. So just be thoughtful about things that you're doing and moving around. And I know this is nerve-wracking, right? I used to do it a gazillion years ago, so I know it is nerve-wracking. But, calm down. Breathe. You seem very comfortable with the material, which was quite good. You seem prepared. Slow down, and we'll follow you.
Okay. I think to add to what's already been said, I think as a team and what you presented, there's obviously passion about this, and that comes across to the group you're presenting to. Especially in the problem, that's where I saw it. In the solutions, we're a board of trustees, we're handling 50 different problems. It's nice to have a clear roadmap. If you've sold us what you did on the idea, I think we're all disturbed by the college's choice and what the students have been subjected to with this whole single option. It's what do we do about it? Talking about being our own credit union, is that viable? It's a great thing to put out there as a suggestion, but I would spend more time on pick the solution. I think you said something to the point of being focused on a recommendation. Definitely play that out a little bit more. Also, at the introduction, and I realize this is difficult, but if you could do something, I found myself wondering, okay, where are you going to go with this? So I'm busy trying to stay tuned in, whereas in the intro you talked about, so we're going to talk to you about this problem, we've got a couple of solutions that we're going to come to, something that I know where you're going with this, so I can relax a little bit and listen to your story more without having to worry about am I going to address you, or are we going to address your concerns being brought to us? So something up front that just kind of captures, not at the detail level, but this is what you're going to do. Again, don't take this critical. I think it was a great presentation. We definitely want to do something here. Yeah. We just don't know what to do.
Yeah. Spencer, it's Spencer, right?
Yes.
To your question about which solution seemed like, the better solution if we had an opinion, I'm concerned about number 2 because of the regulatory approvals and things like that you were going to have to get to establish a credit union, a banking institution. So do some research and be prepared on, the things the challenges that will come with that. That speaks to, is it really a viable option? And I understand that's a longer term solution that you are proposing, but even longer term, right? Given the banking industry, is that something viable for an institution of higher education at this point?
To be honest, we just wanted to go with the start of that idea and thinking that was good for the students. When looking at it a little more long term, like sustainability, and like long term, as long as it can go, we were thinking of ultimately trying to get it as a bigger idea than just our school system, but an entire school system, to go in with the idea of let's create a banking system for our students to protect them and also fund the money that would also help the schools fund the money once the banks get up and going.
That could have been Hire One's original objective, right?
Yeah.
So I really like how we're ending on solutions, because I've seen a really effective strategy that maybe you want to consider, where groups, whether they're graduate students or actual professionals, they'll say to the audience, now, we thought a lot about a number of different options. We want to walk you through some of our considerations, but we want you to focus on what we're going to recommend. You have one zip across the line, and you can say, we could do nothing. And as it stands right now, here's what we see in terms of the benefits and costs. Number 2, and this is something that you didn't address, but again, what if you went to Hire One and said, listen, we have students, we have trustees, we have a lot of disgruntled customers. Before we go in this direction, we want to give you the opportunity to make right and to perhaps improve your own reputational value by working with us. We're willing to partner with you. Now, if they say no, that's fine, but to an audience, that would be really powerful, that you haven't thrown them out completely. You're still willing at some point, from a professional standpoint, to consider. And then you just kind of keep walking through, and then eventually you get to the one, and you show us that you've thought through a number of options, and you say, this is what we would recommend. You decide what the recommendation is. You walk us through what your considerations were, but you come in with confidence and say, we're going with this one. So,
very good. Thank you.
Yeah, again, great job. I feel, I came in here at, like both of you, at 5:45, and I said our dinner presentation, you got me motivated. I mean, you really, no, I mean, really, I feel very good about what you've done, and I'm very impressed with how disparate you are as a group in terms of interest, in terms of majors, and
thank you.
Some good work.
Dinner, you guys want a good dinner?
Yeah, we're off the clock.
I'm so troubled
Huh?
by this. I mean, I
We are too.
had